It's a story-rich RPG with both tactical and real-time combat elements, wrapped in a surreal and super weird fantasy setting. Is it baby in a jar level good? Watch on and find out. My name is Thoraxe, and this is Strategy for Busy People. If you've got a few minutes, I'll tell you what to play. Claire Obscure Expedition 33 by Sandfall Interactive was highly recommended by a lot of my peers. I ended up putting just under 26 hours into this RPG, so you know it couldn't be that bad. Especially since I bounced out of Avowed pretty quickly. Now, everyone knows that this is a story-rich RPG, so I'm not really going to talk much about the story at all until the end. Suffice it to say that it's rather weird, but it gets decidedly less weird as it goes on, interestingly enough, and contrary to popular opinion. So what is there to talk about when reviewing a story-rich RPG, if not the, well, story? The mechanics, of course. Let's talk about those mechanics. Okay, well, I lied, and we're going to talk specifically about the combat and about a not really mechanics element to it first. And that's the scale of the battles. Even from the early fights, this game gave me some really strong OG JRPG combat vibes. The fantastical skills, the big explosions and graphics. It all made me feel like I was playing some of those classic games of my youth. But then again, I have rarely ever played an RPG with this type of turn-based tactical battle, so I guess that's the only thing it could have reminded me of. Anyway. The other interesting thing about these turn-based tactical battles is the decidedly not turn-based element of them, which are the dodge and parry mechanics. When the enemy attacks you, you don't just do nothing and take it. No, you get to attempt to either dodge or parry the incoming attacks. In the early game, this is super confusing because it's all new, and the window for successfully dodging or parrying is pretty narrow. Each enemy has its own specific attack patterns and timing, and especially in the later game, these patterns tend to be intentionally misleading. Parrying affords the opportunity to launch a massive counterattack, but annoyingly, you only get to counterattack if you parry the entire set of incoming blows. So for more complicated attack patterns, forget it. Just hope you can dodge everything. Then, later in the game, you also get introduced to a second type of parry called a gradient counter. The enemy's gradient attacks are telegraphed by a graying of the screen and a temporary slow motion moment, but you still have to figure out the timing on when to actually hit the key for the gradient counter. I gotta say that I found the dodge and parry mechanics really quite frustrating to start, so I actually went out and found a mod that made them a little easier. I did this instead of adjusting the entire game difficulty because I thought that would have made the experience quite boring. In the long run, I think this was the right choice. And before getting back to it, the only other mods I used were a game performance mod that supposedly helped prevent some stuttering and other issues, and a mod that lets you do more than 9,999 damage. Being limited to just under 10k of damage would have made many of the fights downright boring and dragged them out way longer than would have been tolerable. Okay, back to mechanics. As you go along in your travels throughout the game, you end up building up a party of heroes, each with their own unique weapons and skill sets. You can only fight with 3 members in your party at once, and, of course, I had no idea what was going to work out the best, so I ended up switching back and forth with everyone, trying to keep them roughly at the same level. This is probably the best course of action. Minor spoiler, there are a couple of scenarios where you don't have much choice over your party members, and having some really weak-assed people probably would have been an unpleasant experience for a little bit. While each hero has a unique weapon, you discover many specific versions of that unique weapon for that character, and each weapon version has a slightly different set of bonuses that it might provide. As an example, the Mael character has what appears to be some kind of fencing-type rapier or foil sword, and one of the options I discovered would heal the party when she switched battle stances. picking the right weapons for each character you want to use to complement one another is its own interesting decision space, and I'll go into that in a little more detail in a moment. In addition to the different weapons and different skills, each character has completely different fighting mechanics. Mael has different stances that provide bonuses and penalties. CL has a system of light and dark attacks that either stack or consume cards on enemies. Monoko has a wheel with different modes that allow its skills to get massive damage bonuses, and so on and so forth. Between all these different combat mechanics, the deep skill trees for each character, and the different weapons, it makes for a really huge and varied decision space for you to figure out how you want to approach the game. In my case, I like the fact that Burn could stack on enemies and do continual damage, and that Lune and Mael could both take advantage of the Burn status. So I would rack up huge Burn stacks on enemies with them and simultaneously use CL to continually stack Fortell, and then consume it with one of her healing skills to heal the party. This allowed for truly massive damage generation. I pretty much only wanted to use this team, but as I mentioned earlier, I tried to keep everyone leveled similarly, just in case. And with all that talk of just the specific combat mechanics, we haven't even begun to discuss the traditional RPG elements, like adding attribute points to your character as they level up. The attributes do the things you might expect. Might does extra damage, Vigor gives extra health, but to add yet another layer of complexity, each weapon a character might use has a different attribute class that it's associated with, which, when leveled up, causes even more damage to be done. Look, I could keep going on and on about the additional layers of stuff in this game, from the Pictos system to the gradient attacks to base attacks, and even the complexities of the action points during combat. You might think that with all of this stuff going on, it would just be too complex to manage, but in the end, it actually all worked out. You figure out the things that are most interesting to you, and you try to min-max them as best you can, but you can totally get through the game without worrying about the minutiae of it. But if you want to, that minutiae is there. Before I give my final verdict, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Agree with me, disagree with me, or want to see other content? Let me know in the comments below. Want to try this game yourself? Check out my humble affiliate link below. And if you want to support me in making more of these videos, become a patron on Patreon. Your support really makes a difference. The final verdict. Look, this is a Sandfall game. It has a solid story about grief and loss, and well-developed characters with backstories. The completionists could easily spend 40+ hours going everywhere and exploring all of the side stories and locales. The game is beautiful. Blah, blah, blah. To be honest, if it weren't for the super interesting mechanics of the game, I probably would have bounced out way earlier because, to a degree, the story kind of started to drag on. It started as a fantastical and weird and interesting, but as it progressed, it got kind of predictable and, frankly, kind of sad. On my trademark 3-point score scale of avoid, meh, and I forgot to eat, in spite of pretty much no food at all in this game and only a bottomless supply of elixirs to drink. I am somewhat begrudgingly rating this as a must-play. You might be surprised to hear that, given that I did play through it to completion, but I was kind of tired of the story and was hoping the game would end by the end. So, your mileage may vary on this one. When I hit the end of the road, I sat down with a nice croissant and some Bordeaux and had myself a nice collation. That's French for snack. There's a lot of Frenchy stuff in this game.